History's greatest stories were never written down. We are about to enter the silent library of human experience, a place where entire civilizations left their mark not in ink, but in the very earth beneath our feet. This is the chronicle of the invisible, the map of societies without written records. By the end of our journey, you will see the human past in a completely new light, learning to read the whispers left in stone, bone, and ancient memory. How do we reconstruct a world from a shattered pot or the alignment of a single stone? What profound truths lie hidden in landscapes we walk past every day? What does it truly mean for a society to vanish when its echoes are still sounding all around us? Their library was built of memory and landscape, a living archive where every elder was a librarian and every ritual a historical text. These non-literate societies engineered entire worlds of knowledge without ever picking up a stylus or a pen. To call them simple is to fundamentally misunderstand human ingenuity. We must first dismantle the persistent myth that writing is the sole hallmark of advanced civilization. Many cultures developed incredibly sophisticated systems for governance, astronomy, and philosophy, all preserved and transmitted through song, story, and sacred ceremony. The very term pre-literate implies they were simply waiting for the technology of writing to arrive, which is often not the case at all. Many communities actively preferred their oral traditions, seeing a distinct advantage in the fluid, interactive nature of the spoken word. A story told aloud could be adapted to the audience, its lessons sharpened for the moment, unlike a static mark on a page. Their history was not a dead record, but a performance, constantly reaffirmed and renewed by each generation. This choice reflects a deep understanding of knowledge as a living, breathing thing. So when we say a society left no written records, we are not saying they left no records at all. We are merely stating that we need to learn a new language to read them, a language etched into the land itself and carried on the breath of their descendants. This is the silent library, and we are just now learning how to check out its books. The ground beneath our feet holds stories waiting to be read. An archaeologist sees a hill not as a simple landform, but as a deliberately constructed burial mound, a sacred space that resonated with meaning for an entire community. This is the first method for mapping the invisible, reading the earth itself as a primary document. Every terrace carved into a mountainside is a chapter on agricultural ingenuity, a testament to feeding a population against formidable odds. An ancient pathway worn into the soil reveals the veins of trade and communication connecting distant groups. The very placement of a settlement, nestled near a river bend or perched on a defensible plateau, speaks volumes about resource management, social organization, and spiritual beliefs tied to the land. To unlock these terrestrial texts, researchers now employ remarkable tools like LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. This technology acts like a pair of magical glasses, allowing us to peel back the dense veil of a modern forest canopy. From above, laser pulses map the ground's microtopography, revealing the ghostly outlines of entire cities hidden for centuries. Suddenly, the faint impressions of streets, plazas, and grand buildings emerge from the data, a sprawling urban center no one knew existed. The landscape is a palimpsest, a manuscript scraped clean and written over again and again, yet still holding the faint, layered imprints of every human hand that has shaped it. Learning to read its subtle grammar, the way a river curves or a stone is aligned, allows us to reconstruct not just grand monuments, but the daily rhythms and grand designs of societies that left no written manifestos. Yet these silent structures are only one part of the story. That simple clay pot resting in your hands is far more than just an old piece of pottery. It is a capsule of cultural information, a word in a vast and silent language we are only just learning to translate. This is the second method for mapping the invisible, the profound language of objects. Every artifact, from a stone tool to a piece of jewelry, whispers secrets about the people who made and used it. Through the science of material culture analysis, we learn to listen. The very substance of an object speaks volumes. Was it made from a rare obsidian found only in a distant mountain range? That single choice reveals sprawling trade routes and social connections that crossed vast landscapes. The intricate patterns painted on its surface are not random decorations. They are a symbolic system, a visual language encoding beliefs about the world, the cosmos, and the community's place within it. Then there is the story of use, written in the subtle where patterns a microscope can reveal. The way a stone axe handle is polished smooth from a grip tells us about the daily rhythm of labor. The microscopic residue of maize or fish left inside a cooking pot becomes a direct testimony to an ancient meal, opening a window onto diets, culinary practices, and seasonal harvests. A spear point is not just a weapon. Its design, weight, and the way it fractured upon impact can narrate a detailed story of hunting strategies and the formidable prey our ancestors faced. These objects are the tangible echoes of intangible lives. They provide direct, albeit fragmented, testimony to the thoughts, skills, and daily routines of people who left no diaries or royal decrees. As we learn to interpret the whispers of these individual objects, we are naturally drawn to the grander structures they inhabited. A grand stone circle is far more than a collection of rocks. It is a philosophical argument made solid, a society's deepest beliefs about the cosmos and their place within it, frozen in time. This is the third method for mapping the invisible, interpreting architectural allegories. From the towering monoliths of Stonehenge to the intricate cliffside apartments of Mesa Verde, these structures are not mere shelters. They are physical manifestations of a collective worldview, built to encode social rules, spiritual convictions, and a profound understanding of the natural world. The very blueprint of a settlement is a map of its social soul. The size and placement of houses whisper of status and family structure. A single, disproportionately large dwelling in the center of a village suggests a chieftain's home, a physical anchor for political power. The presence of a large, open plaza or a communal grain storage pit speaks to a culture that valued shared resources and collective identity. Conversely, the sudden appearance of defensive walls or a move to an easily defensible cliff face tells a story of conflict, a community turning inward for protection. These choices are never accidental. They are deliberate allegories written in stone and timber. The orientation of a temple complex to capture the sunrise on the solstice reveals a deep, functional engagement with astronomy. It shows a people who saw their rituals as inseparable from the celestial dance, building a calendar into the very foundations of their sacred spaces. The materials themselves tell a story of environmental adaptation and ingenuity. Using adobe in a desert or layering sod on an Arctic dwelling demonstrates a sophisticated response to local conditions, a dialogue between human need and the resources the land provided. Even the construction technique is a clue. The sheer labor required to move a multi-ton megalith points to a highly organized society capable of mobilizing a workforce, a society with a shared purpose powerful enough to literally move mountains. By learning to read these architectural allegories, we are not just studying ruins. We are deciphering the living, breathing social contracts that once governed every aspect of life, allowing us to hear the echoes of the community that once called these silent stones home. A burial site holds more than bones. It is a final statement, a deliberate arrangement of a life for eternity. The careful placement of a body, surrounded by tools, pottery, and personal ornaments, is not a random act. It is a profound expression of belief, status, and identity, frozen in a single moment. This is our fourth method for mapping the invisible, unraveling the social fabric from burials and rituals. Mortuary archaeology allows us to read these silent tableaus, providing unparalleled insight into the most intangible aspects of a culture, the beliefs that written words would have struggled to capture. The treatment of the dead is a mirror reflecting the values of the living. A body laid to rest with immense care, perhaps in a fetal position or facing a specific direction, speaks to complex concepts of ancestry, respect, and a possible journey to another world. The objects chosen as companions for that journey are deeply revealing. A young person buried with hunting weapons suggests their role was recognized and honored by the community. An elder surrounded by rare shells or finely crafted jewelry might indicate a lifetime of accumulated status or wisdom. Differences in these practices are like chapters in a social ledger. When one grave is a simple pit and another is an elaborate tomb filled with treasures, we are seeing clear evidence of social stratification. The distinct goods buried with men, women, and children can illuminate long-lost gender roles and the significance of different age grades within the society. This physical evidence helps us understand the invisible architecture of power, respect, and belonging that govern daily life. Similarly, the spaces reserved for rituals open another window. An area with a concentration of unusual artifacts, like specially shaped stones or animal bones arranged in a precise pattern, points to a place of ceremony. A room within a dwelling that is oddly empty of everyday tools, but features a unique altar or hearth, might have been a space for private spiritual practice. These were the stages where community bonds were strengthened, where myths were reenacted, and where the cosmos was believed to be influenced. From the profound silence of the grave, we learn about the noise of life, the laughter, the disputes, the stories told around the fire, and the shared beliefs that wove individuals into a cohesive whole. These echoes of ritual and remembrance allow us to hear the stories that were passed down, not on parchment, but through generations of sacred practice. The voice of an elder speaking into the firelight is a library in motion. This is the fifth method for mapping the invisible, weaving history from the rich oral tapestry of spoken word. These traditions are not simple fairy tales. They are a society's living, breathing historiography, a dynamic system for preserving everything from epic migrations to the proper way to track a herd of caribou. An epic poem might encode a real journey across a continent, its heroes standing in for entire clans. A complex genealogy recited from memory does more than list names. It charts political alliances and land rights across centuries. Even a simple folk song can carry detailed knowledge of seasonal plants or the behavior of local animals, a survival guide woven into melody. Of course, these are not literal, word-for-word transcripts of the past. They are cultural maps designed to guide behavior, teach moral lessons, and strengthen a shared identity with every performance. The anthropologist Jan van Sinne dedicated his life to demonstrating how we can carefully analyze these narratives, peeling back the layers of metaphor and symbolism to find the historical kernels within. The structure of a story, the specific words chosen, and even the context of its performance all offer clues. A recurring theme of a great flood in the traditions of many coastal peoples may point to a shared memory of rising sea levels. A legend about a battle with a monstrous beast could be a metaphorical account of a conflict with a rival group identified by a specific animal totem. This oral tapestry is constantly being rewoven, each generation adding its own threads of understanding, making it a fluid and responsive record. It perfectly complements the silent, static evidence we pull from the ground. A story about an ancestral homeland aligns with the pottery styles found in that very region. A song describing a specific mountain pass used by traders finds its echo in the ancient pathways revealed by LiDAR. Together, they prove that history is not just something that happened. It is also a story we tell ourselves to understand who we are, a story carried for generations on the human voice. This living memory of people and place is deeply intertwined with an encyclopedic knowledge of the natural world, a sixth sense for reading the landscape that was essential for survival. A pigment grinder is a silent stone until you see the living hand that uses it. This is our sixth method for mapping the invisible, ethnographic analogy, where the vibrant present helps illuminate the silent past. It is the practice of carefully observing contemporary societies, especially those with long-standing traditions, to generate informed hypotheses about how ancient peoples might have lived. Think of an anthropologist documenting the precise way a hunter tracks prey, or the complex social rules that govern the sharing of a large catch. These living examples offer a powerful lens through which to view the fragments we unearth. Imagine finding a set of small, worn stones and bowls at a dig site. In isolation, they are just objects, but if an ethnographer has documented a modern community using nearly identical stones to grind ochre for intricate body painting during ceremonies, a hypothesis ignites. Suddenly, those artifacts are no longer just tools. They are connected to rituals of identity, to the human desire for adornment and symbolic expression. This is not about claiming the past was identical to the present. It is a tool of thoughtful inference. The critical step is to draw analogies from cultures living in similar environments or with comparable survival strategies. The way a contemporary group in the Arctic builds temporary shelters from snow could offer profound insights into the possible uses of certain stone arrangements found at a prehistoric site in a similar landscape. This method breathes speculative life into the static. A collection of bone flutes becomes more than an assemblage. The haunting music played on similar instruments by a living culture suggests the sounds that may have filled their ceremonies, the melodies that might have accompanied a story or a prayer. It helps us cross the final, most difficult bridge in archaeology, moving from understanding what people did to pondering why they did it. It transforms a silent spear point from a simple tool into an object that speaks of courage, of provision, of the shared tension and triumph of the hunt. By respectfully listening to the living, we learn to hear the whispers of the long gone, completing our map with the colors of human intention. A single strand of DNA from an ancient bone is a time capsule written in the language of life itself. This is our seventh method for mapping the invisible, reading the genetic chronicles encoded in our very cells. The field of archaeogenetics opens a biological ledger, one that records epic journeys, deep family ties, and forgotten struggles in a silent, molecular script. By extracting and analyzing ancient genetic material, we can trace human migrations that left no visible trail, revealing how populations branched out across continents, encountered one another, and sometimes merged over thousands of years. This data allows us to see a dynamic map of humanity in motion, a story written not in stone but in bloodlines. On a much more intimate scale, the genetic diversity within a single burial ground can be read like a social registry. By comparing the DNA of individuals buried side by side, we can reconstruct family trees stretching across generations. Were these people all closely related, suggesting a tight-knit clan buried with their ancestors? or do we find genetically distinct groups pointing to a community that welcomed outsiders through marriage or trade? This microscopic view reveals the invisible architecture of kinship that held a society together. The biological record also holds tales of tragedy and resilience. The DNA of ancient pathogens recovered from skeletal remains can identify devastating epidemics that swept through populations. We can now find genetic evidence of diseases like the plague or tuberculosis in skeletons thousands of years old, offering a startlingly direct explanation for a sudden decline in a community or a major shift in settlement patterns. This genetic evidence acts as a powerful and independent witness. It can corroborate a theory suggested by pottery styles or linguistic patterns, or it can completely upend a long-held belief, forcing us to reconsider the entire narrative of a people. Most profoundly, this method connects us to the past on a deeply personal level. That genetic blueprint belonged to a real person who laughed, loved, and faced their own world. They are no longer just a skeleton in the ground, but an individual whose biological story we can now begin to read. And often, the trails this biological map reveals are the very same paths followed by another fundamental human creation, the words we speak. The words we speak today are layered with history, a linguistic archaeology where every term is a potential artifact. This is our eighth method for mapping the invisible, linguistic paleontology, the science of tracing the past through the evolution of language itself. By carefully studying how languages change and diverge over centuries, we can reconstruct their ancient ancestors, hypothetical proto-languages that were never written down. The vocabulary of these lost mother tongues becomes a powerful cultural dictionary, giving us direct insight into the daily lives and environments of the people who spoke them. For instance, if linguists can reconstruct a common word for salmon across many related languages, it strongly implies that the ancestral society lived near a major salmon run. If that same proto-language has a rich vocabulary for different types of snow and ice, but lacks a single word for ocean, we can begin to map their homeland with surprising precision. The borrowing of words between unrelated languages acts like a cultural fingerprint, revealing ancient contact zones. The presence of a word for a specific kind of pottery in one language that clearly originated in another tells a story of trade, migration, or shared technological innovation. By analyzing the rate at which languages tend to change, linguists can even build a family tree of human speech and estimate rough timelines for when populations split and migrated apart. This is not just about words, it is about the intellectual and cultural landscapes they represent. The names they gave to the stars, the metaphors they used for the seasons, the very structure of their grammar, all reflect a unique way of seeing the world. We are, in a very real sense, listening to the echoes of ancient conversations, hearing the whispers of people long gone in the living language we use every day. And just as words preserve a world long vanished, so too can the very food we eat tell a story of epic journeys and forgotten gardens. The same stars that guide us today once whispered secrets to ancient farmers and sailors. For societies without written records, the night sky was a living map, a sacred clock, and a grand mythological narrative all rolled into one. This is our ninth method for mapping the invisible celestial cartography, where we learn to read the stars as they did. The field of archaeoastronomy investigates these profound relationships, revealing how ancient peoples wove astronomical events into the very fabric of their daily lives and spiritual beliefs. Consider the great tomb of Newgrange in Ireland. For most of the year, its inner chamber lies in deep darkness, but on the dawn of the winter solstice, a single, narrow beam of sunlight pierces a special opening above the entrance, flooding the sacred passage with light. This was no accident. It was a meticulously engineered event, a moment where the sun itself was invited into a house of the dead, likely symbolizing rebirth and the promise of the sun's return. On the other side of the world, the vast Nazca lines in Peru etched giant figures of animals and geometric shapes into the desert floor. While their full purpose remains a mystery, many of these immense lines point directly toward the horizon where the sun, moon, and certain stars would rise or set during key seasonal events. This celestial knowledge was intensely practical. Knowing precisely when the Pleiades star cluster first appeared in the pre-dawn sky could signal the exact time to plant seeds, ensuring a community's survival. It was also deeply spiritual. The cyclical dance of the heavens mirrored the cycles of life, death, and regeneration on Earth, connecting every individual to a cosmic order. By decoding this celestial cartography, we see their world as they saw it, not as a random collection of events, but as an integrated whole where human time and cosmic time were one and the same. This intimate bond with the environment shaped not just their rituals but the very rhythm of their existence. The remnants of a single meal can narrate an epic of survival. Our 10th method for mapping the invisible reads the profound stories told by subsistence signatures, reconstructing entire diets and economies from what was left behind. Picture an archaeologist carefully sifting through an ancient trash heap known as a midden. To the untrained eye, it is just a pile of dirt, shells, and broken bones. But to a researcher, it is a layered archive, a direct record of what people consumed, discarded, and ultimately how they lived. Within these seemingly mundane piles lie the answers to fundamental questions. Was this a society of nomadic hunters who followed vast herds, or settled farmers who cultivated the land? Did they rely on the bounty of the sea, or had they learned to herd their own animals? The science of zooarchaeology, the study of animal bones, deciphers this story one fragment at a time. The bones themselves are a library. Cut marks from stone tools reveal precise butchery techniques, showing a deep understanding of anatomy. The very species present paint a picture of the local environment and hunting preferences, but perhaps most telling is the age profile of the animals. Finding mostly young male animals in a deposit, for instance, is a classic signature of herding. It suggests a managed strategy where young males were culled for meat while females were kept to maintain the herd. This simple demographic detail marks the monumental shift from hunting to domestication. Alongside the bones, the subtle science of paleoethnobotany analyzes ancient plant remains. Tiny, nearly invisible grains of pollen preserved in the soil can reconstruct the entire landscape, revealing whether it was an open grassland or a dense forest. The discovery of charred seeds from domesticated crops like wheat or maize, concentrated in one area, signals the adoption of agriculture. The type of seeds found can even indicate the seasons when a site was occupied. These subsistence signatures do more than just list a menu. They inform us about the daily rhythm of life, the organization of labor, and the seasonal movements of a community. A diet rich in migratory game suggests a society that moved with the herds. A reliance on stored grains points to a more sedentary life, with a need for advanced planning and collective storage. This evidence shows a society's dynamic relationship with their environment, revealing how they adapted to its challenges and actively shaped it for their own survival. The story of what they consumed is always intertwined with the story of what they created, leading us directly to the evidence of their craft and their connections to a wider world, found in the very objects they traded across vast distances. That volcanic glass blade in your hand contains a hidden map of its own. Its chemical signature is a unique fingerprint, one that can pinpoint the exact volcano it came from, even if that mountain lies hundreds of miles away. This is our 11th method for mapping the invisible, the chemistry of place, where we use proven studies and isotopic analysis to trace the journeys of both objects and people. Using a technique called X-ray fluorescence, scientists can identify the precise mix of elements within a piece of obsidian or pottery without damaging it. When this chemical fingerprint matches one from a known geological source, a story unlocks. That simple tool is no longer just a local artifact. It is proof of a long-distance trade route, a testament to the social networks that connected distant communities. The journey is written in the object itself, but the most profound journeys we can trace are those of the people. The enamel in our teeth forms during childhood and locks in the chemical signature of our early environment. By analyzing isotopes of strontium, which vary based on local geology, we can determine the very bedrock of where a person grew up. Oxygen isotopes, absorbed from drinking water, provide clues about the climate and altitude of their homeland. So, if we find a skeleton in one region whose teeth tell a story of a childhood spent in a completely different geological zone, we have clear evidence of a personal migration. This individual moved, and their bones remember the journey. We can go even further, reconstructing the very food on their plate. Isotopes of nitrogen and carbon preserved in bone collagen act as a lasting dietary record. The ratio of these elements can distinguish between a diet rich in marine resources and one based on land animals, or even between different types of ancient crops. We can see when a society shifted from hunting and gathering to farming, not from a change in tools, but from a change in the chemical composition of their bones. This transforms a silent skeleton into a dynamic biography. We can now identify a first-generation immigrant in a burial ground, or trace the lifetime movement of a nomadic herder. These chemical signatures map the invisible pathways of trade, the pulse of migration, and the intimate details of daily sustenance, revealing a world in constant dynamic motion. This scientific tracing of physical movement finds its echo in the spread of something equally powerful, the movement of ideas. A unique spiral carved into a stone in one valley, and then again on a pot found 100 miles away, is more than a coincidence. It is a trail of breadcrumbs left by the movement of a shared idea. This is our 12th method for mapping the invisible, tracing the diffusion of ideas across the ancient world. When a specific style of pottery, a distinctive tool design, or a powerful artistic motif appears suddenly at widely separated sites, we are witnessing the footprints of cultural exchange. By meticulously mapping the distribution of these artifacts, we can reconstruct entire networks of interaction that linked distant communities. This process reveals a world in constant conversation. Did the revolutionary knowledge of metalworking, for instance, radiate from a single point of origin, carried by itinerant smiths from village to village? Or did a potent religious symbol, perhaps representing a water spirit or a sky deity, travel along established trade routes, adopted and adapted by each culture it touched? The journey of a single idea can be traced like a current through this vast web. A new type of fishhook design appearing up and down a river system tells a story of shared technological improvement. The spread of a particular burial practice across a wide geographic area suggests the movement of people or the powerful influence of a new belief system about the afterlife. Understanding cultural diffusion fundamentally changes our perspective. It allows us to see these non-literate societies not as isolated, self-contained islands, but as vibrant, interconnected nodes in a vast continental network. Knowledge, innovation, and spiritual beliefs flowed along these invisible pathways as freely as shells, obsidian, and salt. This was a dynamic cultural landscape, a living system where ideas were the most precious cargo, constantly being shared, debated, and remade, shaping the destiny of societies from one generation to the next. On the banks of the Indus River over 4,000 years ago, a civilization thrived without leaving a single deciphered word. The people of the Indus Valley built immense, meticulously planned cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, yet the secret of their language remains locked away on thousands of small, inscribed seals. This is the ultimate test of our methods, a society whose entire story must be read from the ground up. Their urban genius is undeniable. Walking through the ghostly streets of Mohenjo-Daro, you would have seen a world of stunning order. The streets were laid out in a perfect grid, with standardized, uniformly sized bricks used in every building, from the smallest house to the great public bath. This speaks of a remarkable social cohesion, a shared vision enforced not by a king's decree, but by a collective understanding of how a city should function. What is profoundly telling is what is missing. There are no towering pyramids, no grandiose palaces filled with treasure, no colossal statues of a ruler. The largest structures are not temples of power, but practical wonders like the Great Bath, a vast, watertight public facility that likely served a ritual purpose for the entire community. This absence screams a silent truth. Power here may not have been concentrated in a single divine monarch, but was perhaps distributed among a council of elders or merchant guilds, a form of governance that would have been radically different from its contemporaries in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Their spiritual world is whispered to us through art. Intricately carved seals depict powerful animals like bulls and unicorns, and mysterious hybrid creatures, part human and part beast. These were not mere decorations. Pressed into clay, these seals marked goods and documents, their symbols representing a complex belief system and a network of trade that stretched all the way to the cities of Mesopotamia, where Indus Valley seals have been found. The civilization's eventual disappearance is as silent as its rise. The cities were not destroyed in a great war, but slowly, methodically abandoned. The layers of sediment tell a story of environmental change, of monsoons shifting and rivers that once gave life altering their courses, turning fertile plains into arid land. The people did not vanish, but likely dispersed, their grand urban experiment fading back into the landscape. The Indus Valley civilization stands as our most powerful case study, a society of profound sophistication that challenges our very definition of history, proving that a society's most enduring legacy is not always written in words, but in the very bricks and stones they left behind. The Pacific Ocean was their open book, its pages written in waves and wind. While the Indus Valley civilization built cities of brick, the Polynesian voyagers mapped a world of water, navigating the greatest expanse of ocean on the planet without a single written chart. Their chronicles were not inscribed on clay, but carried in the memory of master navigators and encoded in the rhythms of the sea itself. Their story is an epic written on the move, a testament to human courage and environmental genius. The key to their success was the double-hulled canoe, a revolutionary vessel that was both stable and fast, capable of carrying families, plants, and animals across thousands of miles of open ocean. But the canoe was just the vehicle. The true map was in their minds, a living library of celestial knowledge. They memorized the precise paths of hundreds of stars, using them as a fixed compass in the night sky. By day, they read the subtle patterns of ocean swells, feeling the way the waves reflected off distant islands through the hull of their canoe. They watched the flight paths of birds, knowing that certain species always flew toward land at dusk. A cloud formation on the horizon, of a specific color and shape, could signal an island still far beyond the visible curve of the Earth. This was wayfinding, a science of observation so refined it allowed them to deliberately sail into the void, confident in their ability to find a speck of land in a universe of blue. We can trace their incredible journey through the archaeology they left behind. On island after island, we find the distinct, intricate patterns of lapita pottery. This ceramic signature acts as a trail of breadcrumbs, marking the path of their expansion from the islands of Southeast Asia, eastward across the vast Pacific. The rapid spread of the sweet potato, a plant native to South America found across the Polynesian islands, tells a story of even longer voyages of contact with another world. The dispersal of the chicken, an animal that originated in Asia, provides another biological marker of their journey. These material clues are powerfully corroborated by the living oral tradition. Genealogical chants passed down for generations are not just lists of names, they are navigational records chronicling the names of canoes, the routes they took, and the stars they followed to discover new islands. To prove this was possible, modern Hawaiian sailors built the hokulea, a replica of a traditional double-hulled canoe, and using only these ancient wayfinding techniques, successfully sailed it across the Pacific. This act of experimental archaeology turned legend into lived experience, demonstrating that the silent chronicles of the Polynesians were not myth, but a precise and repeatable science of exploration. They did not simply drift, they conquered the Pacific with intention, creating the most geographically widespread culture in human history, long before the compass was ever invented. Rising from the heart of the North American continent, great serpents of earth and towering pyramids of soil silently narrate an epic of forgotten kingdoms. The mound builders, from the early Adena to the later Hopewell and Mississippian peoples, engineered a monumental language across the landscape, a testament to their vision of the cosmos. Take the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, a sinuous earthwork over 1/4 of a mile long, its coils aligned with the solstice sun and its head pointing to the summer sunset. This was not a random sculpture, it was a celestial clock and a spiritual statement built to harmonize the earthly and heavenly realms. Similarly, the Grand Pyramids of Cahokia, located in what is now Illinois, were not just piles of dirt. Monk's Mound, the largest pre-Columbian earthwork north of Mexico, was a colossal platform that elevated a ruler's residence or a temple high above the sprawling city, a physical manifestation of power visible for miles in every direction. These were the anchors of a sacred geography, places where communities gathered for rituals that connected them to their ancestors and the cycles of nature. The scale of labor required to move millions of baskets of earth speaks of a society with incredible organizational power, capable of uniting thousands of people for a common spiritual and political purpose. The story of these cultures is also written in the objects they traded across astonishing distances. Within the burial mounds of the Hopewell tradition, archaeologists find glittering sheets of mica from the Appalachian Mountains, conch shells from the Gulf of Mexico, and copper from the Great Lakes. This was not simple barter. The movement of these exotic materials across a continent reveals a sophisticated interaction sphere, a vast network of exchange that connected distant societies through shared rituals and beliefs. A chief buried with a headdress of Gulf Coast shark teeth and a breastplate of Lake Superior copper was making a powerful statement about his far-reaching connections and spiritual authority. This flow of rare goods points to a continent that was far from empty, but crisscrossed by routes of pilgrimage, diplomacy, and trade. The peak of this cultural fluorescence was the city of Cahokia, which exploded into existence around 1050 CE. At its height, it was home to tens of thousands of people, a bustling metropolis that rivaled London in population. The city's central plan, with its vast Grand Plaza facing Monk's Mound, was designed for massive public gatherings, likely for ceremonies, markets, and games that reinforced a highly stratified social order. The artifacts unearthed here tell a clear story of power and inequality. In one burial, a man now called the Birdman was laid to rest on a bed of thousands of shell beads, surrounded by sacrificed retainers and rare artifacts, a clear indicator of a powerful, perhaps divine, ruler. Yet by the 1300s, this great city was largely abandoned. The reasons are still debated, a puzzle built from silent clues. Did overhunting and deforestation strain the environment? Did a changing climate disrupt the vital maize agriculture? Did the very concentration of power that built the city lead to social unrest? The mounds remain silent witnesses to a complex civilization that shaped the heart of North America for centuries, its history written not on papyrus but in the very soil. The enduring mystery of their decline reminds us that even the grandest human achievements are part of a delicate balance with the world around them. The modern explorer of invisible societies carries a toolkit that feels borrowed from the future. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, is like giving the Earth an X-ray. By sending pulses of energy into the soil, it listens for the subtle echoes that bounce back from buried walls, ancient pits, or even empty tombs, painting a picture of what lies beneath without ever breaking the surface. It allows archaeologists to read the first page of a site's story before a single trowel touches the dirt. From the ground, we rise to the sky, where LiDAR technology acts as a pair of magical glasses for an entire landscape. Mounted on aircraft or drones, it fires millions of laser pulses at the ground. These lasers penetrate dense forest canopies, and by measuring their return time, they create an exquisitely detailed three-dimensional map of the ground surface. What was once an impenetrable jungle suddenly reveals the ghostly grid of a city, the long ridges of forgotten farmland, or the straight, purposeful lines of a ceremonial road, all hidden for centuries. Drones themselves have become indispensable eyes in the sky, capturing high-resolution photographs that can be stitched together into precise maps, allowing us to monitor the slow erosion of a site or discover subtle features invisible from the ground. And when a fragile artifact is finally unearthed or a crumbling monument is documented, 3D modeling and photogrammetry step in. Using hundreds of overlapping photographs, software builds a perfect digital twin, a replica you can rotate, measure, and explore from every angle. This is not about replacing the careful, patient work of excavation. The feel of the soil and the context of a find will always be sacred. Instead, these tools are powerful companions. They let us see the grand narrative of a landscape, guiding our excavations to the most promising places. Most importantly, they create a permanent digital record of our fragile heritage, a backup copy of history itself as sites around the world face the twin threats of modern development and a changing climate. This is a quiet revolution, one that is expanding our map of the human past at a breathtaking pace, revealing chapters we never knew existed. A shattered pot is a fragment of a story, but the full narrative is always just beyond our grasp. Our maps of invisible societies are brilliant but incomplete, filled with shadows we must learn to acknowledge. The archaeological record is a collection of what survived, not a complete inventory of what existed. Think of all the things that defined a human life: the woven baskets, the carved wooden bowls, the feather cloaks, the very words spoken around a fire. These organic treasures, rich with cultural meaning, almost always rot away, returning to the earth. What remains for us to find is a biased sample, a world disproportionately made of stone, pottery, and the most durable fragments of bone. We are left trying to reconstruct a symphony from a handful of surviving notes. This material bias is compounded by an interpretive one. every generation of archaeologists brings its own cultural baggage and theoretical frameworks to the silent evidence. We are always at risk of projecting our modern worldviews onto ancient peoples. A century ago, a collection of unusual objects might have been immediately labeled as a king's treasure. Today, we might see the same collection as a ritual deposit or the toolkit of a revered shaman. Our vision of the past is inevitably filtered through the lens of the present, a constant reminder that our maps are interpretations, not infallible photographs. The ethical terrain is perhaps the most challenging of all. The science of archaeogenetics offers incredible power to trace ancient lineages, but it demands we handle human remains with profound respect. Who truly owns the story told by a 4,000-year-old bone? Is it the scientist in the lab, or the living descendant community for whom that ancestor is a vital part of their cultural and spiritual identity? These are not abstract questions. Engaging with these communities is no longer a matter of courtesy. It is an ethical and scholarly necessity. Their oral traditions, their deep knowledge of place and plant, their understanding of their own history, provide a context and a humanity that pure archaeology can never access on its own. A local elder's story about a specific hill can transform it from a simple landform into a known burial ground of a revered leader, guiding and validating the scientific inquiry. By acknowledging these gaps, these biases, and these profound ethical responsibilities, we do not weaken our pursuit. We make our maps more honest, more humble, and ultimately more human. A single potsherd is a silent puzzle piece. Its true meaning only emerges when we place it beside the other fragments we have gathered. The ultimate challenge in mapping invisible societies is this delicate art of synthesis, of weaving countless disparate threads into a single, coherent narrative. An archaeologist must act as both a rigorous scientist and an intuitive storyteller, building a plausible story from the silent whispers of the past. This process, often called triangulation, is the disciplined practice of cross-referencing multiple independent lines of evidence. Think of it as building a case where every piece of testimony supports the others. A peculiar style of pottery might suggest a cultural connection to a distant region. That hypothesis is then tested against the genetic data from the skeletons found with the pots. Do their isotopes tell a story of migration from that very same area? We then consult the linguistic record. Do the local languages have loan words that hint at ancient contact with people from that direction? Finally, we look to the environmental evidence. Does a core sample from a nearby lake show a period of drought that could have pushed people to move? When the archaeological, genetic, linguistic, and environmental stories all point toward the same conclusion, we can be far more confident that we are hearing a true echo of history. This is a cautious and deeply iterative process. It requires a humility that acknowledges every map we draw is provisional. A single new discovery, like a previously unknown burial site, can shatter a long-held theory, forcing us to go back to the drawing board to weave a new, more accurate tapestry. Our understanding of the human past is not a static monument, but a living, breathing conversation with the evidence, a story that is constantly being refined and rewritten with every fragment we uncover. These silent chronicles speak directly to the urgent challenges of our modern world. The story of the Polynesian Voyagers is not just a tale of ancient adventure, it is a masterclass in resilience. They thrived for generations on tiny, isolated islands, their survival dependent on a profound and intimate understanding of their environment's limits. When climate shifts or resource depletion threatened, their oral traditions and archaeological records show us they adapted, they innovated, and sometimes they made the courageous decision to sail into the unknown to find a new home. This historical perspective reframes our current climate crisis. It is not the first time humanity has faced a changing world, and the ingenuity of these past societies offers a deep well of inspiration, showing us that adaptation is woven into the very fabric of our species. Their legacy also challenges our most basic assumptions about how to structure a society. The grand city of Cahokia, with its powerful rulers and social stratification, is one model. But the Indus Valley civilization, with its apparent lack of grandiose palaces and its focus on civic infrastructure, presents another. These are not failed attempts at our modern systems, they are successful experiments in different ways of living. They prove that human communities have flourished under models of shared governance, collective labor, and distributed power, reminding us that our current social and economic structures are not inevitable, they are simply choices. This historical diversity is a source of profound hope. We can look to the ancient terraces of the Andes, which prevented soil erosion for centuries, or the agroforestry practices of the Amazon, where people enriched the soil to create fertile black earth. These are not primitive techniques, they are sophisticated, sustainable land management systems that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate and relearn. They hold keys to combating modern desertification and rebuilding healthy ecosystems. Perhaps the most powerful lesson is the act of recovery itself. For too long, the history of civilization was a story told by the literate, often centering a single, linear narrative of progress. By mapping these invisible societies, we are actively recovering a multitude of silenced histories. We are challenging the idea that monumental architecture, urban life, and complex philosophy were invented in one place and then simply spread outward. The evidence now shows us these developments occurred independently across the globe, a symphony of human innovation. This enriched, more inclusive map of our past does more than just fill in blank spaces. It fundamentally changes our understanding of what it means to be human, revealing a tapestry of countless cultures, each with their own unique answers to life's great questions. In doing so, it expands our sense of possibility for the future, offering a wider menu of human experience from which to draw wisdom, resilience, and hope. A single fleck of residue inside a broken clay pot is a molecular time capsule. The next frontier in mapping invisible societies lies not in grand monuments, but in these microscopic traces, in the very proteins and fats that have clung to ancient surfaces for millennia. The emerging science of proteomics now allows us to identify animal species from slivers of bone too small for the eye to see. More astonishingly, by analyzing the ancient proteins absorbed into the fabric of a cooking vessel, we can now determine its very last meal. Was it a stew of wild boar or a porridge of domesticated grains? This transforms a silent pot into a talking witness, providing a direct, intimate snapshot of a single moment in a long-lost kitchen. Alongside proteins, the study of ancient lipids offers another powerful lens. Fats and oils are remarkably durable, surviving in the pores of pottery sherds long after other organic matter has decayed. The specific chemical signature of these lipids acts as a dietary fingerprint. Analyzing a batch of pots from a settlement can reveal whether a community's diet was based on dairy products from herds, on the oils from pressed olives, or on the rich fats of marine mammals. This moves us beyond guessing what people ate to knowing with scientific precision how they utilized their environment. Perhaps the most revolutionary tool on the horizon is sedimentary ancient DNA, or DNA. Imagine taking a core of soil from the floor of a cave once occupied by humans. Within that dirt, invisible to the naked eye, are minuscule fragments of genetic materials shed by every creature that ever lived or died there. By sequencing this environmental DNA, we can reconstruct the entire living tapestry of a place. We can identify the types of grasses that grew nearby, the species of trees that were felled, and the wild animals that were hunted or that simply passed through. This lets us paint a holistic portrait of an ancient ecosystem, understanding the human story as an inseparable part of a vibrant biological community. As these techniques become more sensitive and affordable, they will let us ask profoundly human questions with newfound clarity. We will be able to detect subtle dietary differences between households, shedding light on social inequality. We might identify the biological sex of an individual from the protein residue on their personal tools, opening a window onto ancient gender roles and the division of labor. We are moving closer than ever to writing individual life histories from the molecular ghosts they left behind, and the potential for discovery is still vast. Unexplored territories beckon from the deepest rainforest canopies, where LiDAR is only beginning to reveal its secrets, and from the dark silence of the seabed, where the preserved sites of coastal peoples await their rediscovery. These hidden chapters of the human story are still out there, waiting for their molecular whispers to be heard. The same methods that uncover lost cities can reveal the hidden layers of your own hometown. Your local landscape is a living archive, filled with whispers of the people who shaped it long before anyone wrote their story down. To begin, research the indigenous history of your region. Discover the names and cultures of the societies that thrived there for centuries, their histories carried in oral traditions rather than written documents. A simple online search for the native peoples of your area is a powerful first step, connecting you to a deep, continuous human presence. Then, visit a local museum with a new perspective. Do not just glance at the display cases, look closely at the stone tools and pottery fragments. Notice the unique flaking on a spear point, a signature of the artisan's skill. See the subtle patterns on a broken piece of clay. These are not just decorations but a personal style, a choice made by someone hundreds or thousands of years ago. This transforms anonymous artifacts into personal possessions, linking you directly to the individuals who once held them. On your next walk in a park or a natural area, train your eyes to see differently. That linear pile of stones snaking through the woods is not a natural formation. It is an old property boundary or a field wall built by early settlers or farmers clearing land. A gentle, rounded rise in an otherwise flat field might not be a hillock but a burial mound, a sacred space now sleeping under grass and wildflowers. Even the plants can be clues. A patch of certain edible greens or nut trees growing in a distinct pattern could be a remnant of an ancient garden or a managed forest, a deliberate planting from a time when the land was tended by different hands. Modern technology can be your ally. Free satellite imagery apps allow you to look down on familiar places from above. In fields, especially during dry spells, you might see faint lines or discolorations known as crop marks. These occur because features buried just below the surface, like old foundation trenches or pits, hold moisture differently than the surrounding soil, causing the plants above them to grow at a slightly different rate or color. That faint, rectangular shadow in a farmer's field could be the ghost of a forgotten homestead. Do not explore this invisible map alone. Reach out to your local historical society or an archaeological group. These enthusiasts and experts are guardians of local knowledge, often possessing maps, stories, and insights you will never find online. They can point you to significant sites, explain the nuances of local stone types, and help you understand what you are seeing. You are not surrounded by empty space, but by layers of human experience. Learning to recognize these clues transforms a simple walk into a form of time travel. where every stone wall and subtle earthwork becomes a sentence in the deep, local history written all around you. A blockbuster film might show a lone explorer deciphering a lost language in an afternoon, but the real work of archaeology is a far quieter, more collaborative, and ultimately more human endeavor. We must confront the persistent myths that swirl around ancient societies, ideas popularized by sensational media but dismissed by the overwhelming weight of evidence. There is no geological or archaeological trace of a global, technologically advanced civilization like Atlantis that predates all others. The genuine story, revealed through the methods we have explored, is one of diverse cultures rising independently, each finding their own brilliant solutions to the universal challenges of survival and meaning. The pyramids of Giza stand as a testament to this human genius. Their construction was not the work of alien visitors with anti-gravity technology, but of highly organized Egyptian society with a deep understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and logistics. The so-called mystery often evaporates when we appreciate the power of a motivated, skilled workforce. We have found the workers' settlements, their bakeries, their medical clinics, and even their graffiti proudly naming their crews. The real wonder is not in imaginary outside help, but in the sheer scale of human cooperation and the application of observed natural principles. Correcting these fictions is not an act of destroying wonder. It is an act of recentering it. The true story of humanity's past, built from the silent whispers of pottery, earthworks, and genetic chronicles, is more complex, more diverse, and more inspiring than any simplistic fantasy. It is a story of our own species' resilience, creativity, and boundless capacity for innovation when faced with the raw materials of their world. Our journey through the silent libraries of the past reveals a profound truth that every society, regardless of its tools, leaves a narrative etched into the very fabric of existence. We have learned to read the texts of the earth and the language of objects, to listen for the whispers carried on oral tradition. The chronicles of these invisible societies are not blank pages in our history books. They are richly illustrated maps filled with the contours of cities, the patterns of trade, and the echoes of ceremonies, all waiting for us to learn their unique language of interpretation. From the planned cities of the Indus Valley, with their civic genius and missing kings, to the star-guided voyagers of the Polynesians, who conquered an ocean with memory and observation, these cultures teach us that history is not a single, linear story. It is a multifaceted tapestry of human experience, proving that the human spirit leaves an indelible mark, with or without a written word. The anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss once said that the scientist is not a person who gives the right answers, but one who asks the right questions. Our entire exploration has been a testament to that spirit of endless, patient curiosity. It is an ongoing conversation with the past, where every new fragment of pottery or strand of ancient DNA prompts a better, more insightful question. Now, this perspective becomes a lens you can carry with you. I encourage you to step outside and look at the world around you with new eyes. See the subtle ridge in a local park that might be a forgotten earthwork, or consider the ancient path a nearby road might follow. Recognize the invisible histories embedded in your own landscape and share what you discover with others. If this journey has reshaped your view of the human past, consider subscribing for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries.